Welcome to this episode of the Elite Advisor Podcast. Today we're going to hang out with Alex Kirby. Alex is the founder of Total Family, which is a legacy tool. It's a software that helps advisors guide their clients through the legacy conversation. Typically, when I think of legacy, I think of estate planning. But estate planning is really just the blocking and tackling, or the framework, the tactical part of legacy. But legacy is much more. It's a conversation about what do you want? Why do you want that? And I found most of us as advisors are not diving into that category of a financial plan very well. So Alex is going to walk us through language to use and even tell us about his tool and how advisors are using it to have a deeper conversation. One, to attract new clients, but also to surprise and delight your current clients with a different type of conversation and a different meeting. Let's jump in. Alex, good to see you again, brother.
Yeah, you too. Happy New Year, happy holidays, all the stuff.
You too, man. So we met kind of a roundabout way, and this is where, I'm pretty busy like a lot of people, so I'm not like, I wouldn't say I'm a master networker, but when I do meet somebody in the hallway at an event and I small talk and they say, hey, you got to meet my buddy Alex, which leads to a Zoom call, which leads to me learning about your company, Total Family, which, all those things. And eventually it's like, hey man, we need to hang out and do a podcast together. So I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, thank you. And for me, likewise, like I try to be open to those discussions too, but one of the things you'll hear from me over and over is like leading by example. And I loved your story and all the authenticity that you bring to this stuff. And that's what really jumped out to me and made me feel that connection.
Awesome, man. So your company, if you can give us a background on Total Family real quick, we'll circle back around to practically how I'm envisioning using it now and maybe in the future. And then we'll get into more of your background.
Yeah, sure. Total Family is a software. It's a wealth tech platform that's used by advisors. The purpose of our company is doing legacy better. And everything that is in our software is helping advisors do that, because legacy is really tough to deliver. It's delivered by consultants. The topics itself are kind of hard to pin down. Even when you say the word, people are like, I'm not really sure what you mean. Is that estate planning? But when we talk about legacy, we use the J. Hughes definition of wealth, which is wealth is the well-being of the family. So much broader definition than just financial. And everything that we're doing as a company is not financial at all. So we're doing things like family values, purpose statements, legacy letters, building family histories. We don't do anything related to the money because the wealth advisors know how to do that. And they're really good at it. And so we're trying to give them a partner that can allow them to do this with a little bit more like scale, and actually that it actually fits into their life, not just a conceptual, thing where they get trained and it's editable PDFs or something. The practicality is really important to us.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to unpacking in this episode the path of how do you use this conversation around legacy and a tool like this to get prospects. Because no matter how many advisors I coach, and this is true for my practice, it's like high quality new business is always a need.
Yeah, of course.
I think there's a season of like, it's a desperate need. Like I need it now or I'm not going to stay in the business.
Right.
And then as I've seen like my practice grow over time and I see other advisors, you do get to a place where you can like pause and breathe a little bit and not operate out of a place of fear or urgency every day. And then you get to say, okay, what's my service model? And then, this conversation or this tool is like, it's like a retention play at some point. And so for everybody listening, if what we start talking about is like, hey, that sounds like a luxury, guys, like I wish I had the time to like have these long conversations with clients. Like I feel like every day is just a grind. I don't think that's where you have to start. And so looking forward to your coaching on that with the tool, but
yeah.
Quick rewind on like, how did you become a business owner? Like what gets you into fintech, which I hear is just a tough space to be, and tech is tough, software building's tough. Like what's that been like?
I hate doing like the background, but it's probably relevant to the company. Yeah. I was a commercial banker after school and got to work with closely held businesses. And I think I've always just looked up to entrepreneurs. They've always been my collective hero. That's been the stuff that has interested me. And because I know you share something that's unique about my story is I'm an only child with 10 step and half siblings, 6 marriages, 5 divorces. and all great people, not like a evil step parent narrative at all. But the thing that I always thought was that if we had money, if we had more resources, that this would all have been played out differently. And when I got to work with these closely held businesses, companies doing, $50 to $500 million in revenue, they just kind of looked like my family.
Yeah.
And that was really, really surprising to me. And it made me ultimately understand that money can't be the solution here. And that set me down a path of learning about people like Jay Hughes. I eventually went to work for a client. The company was a great company. I learned a lot. I got to travel the world. But I think at the end of the day, I knew I wanted to do something that was more aligned with my values. And I sort of took all my chips and with the support of my wife, put them all in the middle. And that was like 4.5 years ago.
Nice. So I appreciate you sharing some of your story there, and we kind of related on some of that kind of wild family tree dynamic. I don't know if this wall in my office would be big enough to have a picture of my family tree. It's a lot of branches, but
no.
But
I do think sometimes when I'm speaking to like groups or advisors, I'll say like, raise your hand if you think your family's crazy. And because we only have we just have that one experience with our own specific family. And so everyone's like, I don't know. I'm like, my sister, this person. But in actuality, everyone's sort of feeling that. Sure. And then really at the end of the day, most of us still wouldn't trade these people for anyone else, you know? So it's a little bit of like it's like two competing forces, but I find both of those to be true.
Yeah, it's definitely complicated, especially around the holidays. I feel like a spike in that. When I'm meeting with clients, that feels like it comes up more frequently in meetings. But I believe, and this is when I've learned to have deeper conversations. So as an early advisor, it was, hey, let me help you put your money in the right account and then invest it in this stuff. Like that was it. That's really all I had. I wasn't a great communicator at that point in time. I also hadn't lived a lot of life and hadn't had a limp yet and a bunch of scars to like sit in a deep conversation with somebody or even challenge like a business owner with some truth. Cause I'm like, I just need to do whatever you say because I need your business.
Yeah.
So I think I've over time become a better communicator and been able to sit in deeper topics. But to your point about these business owners having these, tough situations also, I'm almost finding like they're more distracted. And at times something like legacy and saying something like, hey, Jim, I'm so glad you're here. There's a lot of stuff we have to get to. It's the blocking and tackling. Like, we're going to reduce your taxes. We're going to do some good stuff. But there's something you said in our last conversation that I want to sit on for a little bit.
Yeah.
Tell me about this. What are your family's core values? As I go through your tool and it's like, hey, what's your mission statement, core values? Like, man, if you're listening as an advisor and you want to work with business owners or high net worth people, like, I think this is the kind of thing that gets their attention. If you're trying to get high net worth clients off of my performance is better, or I think I can improve your insurance policy, I don't know if that's going to cut it.
Yeah. I think a couple things I would say that are really important for the advisors to know. The first is the bar is not as high as you think. There are not a lot of resources. If you want to talk about having, a quarterly market report on what's going on in the markets, right? It's a pretty high bar. Goldman Sachs is in that game. UBS is in that game. Everyone's sort of in that game. And it's really hard to say we're doing this better than anyone else because there's so many people playing in it. But in this space of legacy, the clients don't have a lot of places to turn. Like they're not talking to their primary care physician about it, and they're not talking to their therapist about it. And so the bar is lower than you think. Most of the time, your clients aren't expecting you to like have all the answers. Like some of the questions you're talking about, or just saying like, Sten, when I say the word legacy, what do you think about? Like that question, and then just asking good follow-up questions is kind of all you need to do, and to be genuine and thoughtful about it. Because people will take this question you can ask it to 10 people, they will take it in 10 different directions. Like some people will go through the lens of their kids. Some people will go through the lens of their business. Some people will talk about their own parents. But it's a really good way to show the client that, or the prospect in this case, that you can go beyond money. And worst case scenario, they say like, Sten, legacy to me is just the money. Don't ever ask me that question again. I haven't heard of that happening.
Yeah.
But that's really the worst case scenario. I think in a lot of cases, people are, when you open that door, they walk right through it.
Yeah. I do think when in our business, estate planning is the word that's used. And I think that's a very kind of structural, do you have the documents in place, beneficiary designations? I feel like if you then say, I want this to be a meaningful conversation, I feel like that's when you then use the word legacy. It's like, explain this to me, help me understand. And I think the language matters. I don't think you beat somebody over their head with it. I mean, maybe there's some emotion around this topic that some business owner would be like, I don't want to talk about it. I'm ignoring it because it's too hard. But my experience so far has been if you can do this category well, it only leads to good conversation.
Yeah, Robert, we have a podcast called Visionary Advisor, which you're going to be a guest on. I'm very excited about it. But Robert Ballantyne said that legacy is what people say about you when you're gone. And I think, and he like kind of contrasted that with company culture, which is what people say about the company, like when they're at their picnic in the backyard kind of thing, like, oh, we actually don't have maternity leave, and that like that kind of stuff. But I think for people when they're talking about legacy, the estate planning is a technical solution, right? That's the structure that we're going to put in place. But before the structure that we're putting in place, like if we think about it like building a house sort of thing, the estate planning is the actual builder coming out. He or she has the blueprints, and they're now building the house. But I think about legacy more as, you just acquired 2 acres in Nashville. You're standing on an empty plot of land with your wife and your kids. And you're like, hey, what do we see here? And they're like, well, the sun sets over here, so we want to make sure we have a big window. And this person has a bad knee. Our grandparent has a bad knee, so we can't have too many stairs over here. And we have to have room for them to run around. So I don't want to do anything that's going to take away the too much grass space. And this, and this, and this, and this. Before you put one, I'm not a builder, so I don't know, one piece of foundation or nail in a piece of wood, sitting there and asking some of the bigger questions before you start doing a document, there's just so much more to it than estate planning. And I think, I'll share a very, very quick story, but we had a client who had their affairs in order, so to speak, will, trust, estate, all that kind of stuff. And he was on a private plane going to a undisclosed location. No one in his family knew. And the plane lost cabin pressure. And in that moment, the first thing that his brain did was start to type out on his phone a letter to his 2 daughters. And the idea of my affairs are in order and saying like, I just have an estate plan, to me is crazy when we really think about these people that we care about and never being able to see them again, and the things that we would want to say and share and all that type of stuff. And it can be heavy. But zooming out before you get into the estate planning, there's a guy by the name of David York who wrote a book called Entrusted that I would recommend anyone read. It's a fantastic book, and David is great. But he says about estate planning, your clients aren't uninformed, they're uninspired. Nice. And what he means is they know they need an estate plan. They got it. But they don't know the why behind it. And if you can be a facilitator of the why, you don't even have to ask them to complete it. They'll just do it. Once you know your why, you can go do it. But until you have the why and some of the stuff that we're talking about, it's like, I don't know, it's just a document.
Yeah. Yeah, my mind goes to like practically, how do I fold this? How do I level up in this category in the flow of my business? And I'm almost thinking that within my fact finder, whatever my onboarding is, like I change, no longer do I have an estate planning section. I have a legacy section.
Love that.
And under that section is estate planning. Like, hey, we're
Yeah.
going to have a will, power of attorney, power of healthcare, trust, whatever it is. But like that is a piece of that conversation and not the whole thing.
Yep. Yep. I love that. I think, you know, for the clients that because our product allows advisors to enroll unlimited clients, because you and I believe, I think we're aligned here. You don't care about your kids more if you have $7 million or $12 million, right? So like it shouldn't be specific to assets from our standpoint. But I think if you ask a client about it, you're covering your butt, because if another advisor comes in and is like, "Oh, actually, we do legacy work," it's like, "Oh man, Sten never mentioned that to me." If you
Which is
mention it and they
frustrating as an
say,
advisor because you're like, yeah, I did. Like when
right,
somebody can,
right,
like when
right,
a client says, I need a retirement planning specialist, and you're like, that advisor just out semantics to me. Like they just
yeah,
used a different
right,
word
right,
and took a
right, right,
client.
right, yeah, yeah. Yeah. But I just think it's like it's very low risk of bringing it up, and if you get to an area where you're like, "Man, I'm not really sure," you can just say that. I'm trying to like lean into what my clients value. There's a lot going on in this legacy space, so I'm trying to level up on legacy. Um, Everyone appreciates that honesty, and like who wouldn't want to work with an advisor that is identifying blind spots, that's growth oriented, and is saying, "Oh wow, this is a big space. Yeah, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna head in this direction, and you're gonna benefit from it as my client."
Yeah. Yeah, we use a tool that we built called Plan Score, which breaks every financial plan into 6 categories: cash flow, investment planning, retirement, tax, estate, and risk management or insurance.
Okay. Yeah, you
I
show.
think
I love it. It's good tool.
for me as an advisor day to day, obviously I have a family, I'm busy too. It's like efficiency equals profitability, but I still want, maximum value with extreme efficiency. I do think there's a lot of advisors that meet with their clients once a year and they have pretty high client retention, so they think they're good, and that's maybe fine.
Yeah.
I'm like, how do I shine in every one of those categories? And so what I've found is that while I can quarterback the category, I have tried to find partners that are kind of like the muscle behind the category to deliver a different experience. And so my responsibility is to communicate and inspire up front that like, hey, here's what a financial plan is. It's not me just trying to manage your investments. It's not me just trying to
Yeah.
sell you an insurance policy. Here's what a financial advisor and planner should do. And I'm up on the whiteboard and I list out the 6 categories. But I'll admit that like estate planning to me has been a very tactical, structural conversation. When I probably my top 20 clients, I've probably fallen short on this legacy conversation with them.
Uh-huh.
But as I was in your tool, it may not be the thing I send them a link to after meeting one. It could create some friction in the lift. Maybe I can just sell them on it with
Yeah,
the
yeah.
motivation. But if I get somebody in and I do a really good job selling a legacy value add, but then I just try to deliver with a couple Word docs and a couple whiteboard sessions with your tool, I'd love you to kind of start walking us through the process of like, how does that step in to alleviate pressure on the advisor to deliver this great experience?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think you touched on something that the Total Family is part of the Ultra High Net Worth Institute. So we think a lot about these problems at a high level, and that group has been doing a really good job. They use the term integrated advisor, and they have 10 domains of family wealth. But what they're also saying is it is impossible to be an expert in all 10. It's just not possible. So when I think about like your areas too, it's like you don't have to be an expert, but you have to be an integrator. You have to know enough about these areas to be like, okay, I'm going to bring this in here. I'm going to be a little informed here. I'm going to tie these things together and make all of this make sense to my client. You don't have to be an expert. It's disingenuous to stand up there and be like, I'm an expert in investments and insurance and
Yeah,
this and this. And it's like, wow, you must, and you have kids. Wow, Stan. So
yeah,
like, I think like people respond to the realism of it
yeah,
all. How we think about legacy is really from a point of practicality, both for families and for advisors. Like we haven't met an advisor or a family that says they're not busy, right? Everyone's busy. So it has to fit into the life of these advisors. And the answer to do that for both of them is the clients need to do the work. The advisor is the one who's integrating it and debriefing it. So for example, like one of the first things a person does in our software we call FamilyOS. So one of the first things someone does in our FamilyOS is they define their personal values. 5 words. At the end of it, they have their 5 words. If they don't want to take 7 minutes and do that, then it's just not of interest to them. That's okay. But if they do that, that probably saves the advisor multiple hours of time of facilitating a meeting where they're extracting these values, et cetera. And then all the advisor needs to do is look at these 5 words and say, Sten, what does loyalty mean to you? Why did you pick that word? Was there any other ones you thought about? Like, can you think of a time in your life when you leaned on loyalty over other things? And that's all you have to do as the advisor is talk about the output. But I think the goal with our software is like, how can we make this really, really practical and do it in a way that the work actually gets done? Because if you have 200 clients, the chances of you having a 2 to 4 hour values discussion with 200 clients is pretty small.
Yeah.
But you can enroll your clients to do their values. And then as they complete it, all of a sudden you're over here, you're like, all right, I had my first values conversation. It felt a little weird.
Yeah.
Like the first time anything does, but I get it. And then by the time, because it's the same output, it's like now I'm on values conversation number 15. I feel pretty good. Like I feel like I can talk about this in a little bit more intelligent way, tie it into some of my stuff. So to us, it's like the clients have to do the lion's share of the work. The advisors have to get comfortable debriefing it. Because if I do my values and then my advisor never asks me about it, then that's not really integration at all. But our tool's set up so the advisors can see, when their clients complete stuff and they get notifications and all that. So we make it as easy as humanly possible, I think. But the clients have to be responsible for the work. And I think that's missing in a lot of the legacy work. Like if you're doing a family meeting or something, we've heard advisors spending like 30 hours preparing for a family summit. It's like, how could you ever do that for more than 1 or 2 clients, Yeah.
I wonder there's an element of this of like being able to lean into clients and tell them a hard truth. And I think what you said is like, if we're not willing to spend 10 minutes on this, like we should probably talk about that. Like that's why is it not that important? Are we ignoring it, avoiding it? Like what's the issue here? Because to be honest with you,
Right.
Jim and Karen, this might be the best 2 hours we spend this whole year. Like I think that's where I find advisors will not lean into that. And, their communication skills, whatever the fear is driving that, it's like, those are probably the moments when I lean in the most, where a client opens up and it's like, okay, we just hit a different tier of connection.
Totally. Yes.
Versus a fact finder, fact interrogation, yellow pad meeting. Here's your performance. You have any questions? See you next time.
Right.
I think a lot of advisors are trapped in that kind of meeting.
I want my advisor to like point some of that stuff out as a objective member. Like if I wanted to avoid a topic, my wife and I can avoid a topic in our own kitchen by ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Like I want someone to say, actually, it seems like, could we pause there for a second?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, in a trusting, loving, like in a human way, you're not coming from a bad place, right?
Yeah.
If you're coming from a bad place, we have a different problem. But if I wanted to avoid these topics, if I wanted to like mail in my workout, I don't need a trainer, right? I can just mail in my workout by myself.
Yeah.
And you talked a little bit about retention. I mean, to me, there's 2 points of retention. There's RIAs across the board retain their clients at like a 97% clip. Yep. So there's no problem there. That's great. A lot of industries would kill for that retention rate. But when the money goes to the spouse or when the money goes to the children, that rate drops dramatically. I've seen 40%, I've seen 19% in various studies. And so to me, that's when we talk about retention, we're not talking about the 97% number. We're talking about, are you connected with that spouse in a meaningful way? Are you connected with the kids in a meaningful way? And you can't fake that, and you can't do it after that person has passed. This has to be a, real actual relationship that you built over time, just like you did with your primary client, because the trust doesn't always transfer.
Yeah.
Right.
I think there are topics in my planning now that if a client said I'm not willing to talk about that, I would say then you can't be a client. Like to do my job well, I need to know what your investment statement is. But I think estate planning is probably one that if they were like, I'm not that interested, I would try to get them to do the basics and I'd be willing to move on. I think for every advisor listening, like you have to decide which categories of your planning are you not willing to budge on. And is a deeper conversation around this. I even think, especially for business owners, if there's multi-generation, like maybe this becomes a topic at some point that you're like, if you are not willing to go through my process and trust me, then I can't be your advisor. That seems a little bold, but I'm not sure what your reaction is to that.
I would say I don't disagree. Like at some point, you're going to have to put some lines in the sand it's going to be different for every advisor. But I also think legacy is a big, scary topic for people. And they don't know how to get started. And if you think about legacy in like 100, legacy isn't one step. We think about it in like 100 steps. And you and I both have younger kids. The first step for a client on legacy might be like, write down your top 3 favorite movies that you want your kids to see in the event that you're not around, right? Write down a book that changed your life. Write about something that happened in your childhood that really changed how you saw the world. Write about a decision that you made that you felt really good about, or a decision that you made that you went against your values and you regretted it. There's a million ways to like access how people think about these types of things. A lot of these matriarchs, if they're older, if they're like, right now we're talking, it's 2026. So if it's like someone who's in there, say north of 65 or something like that, they're probably not the most open, touchy, feely kind of, that generation isn't really known for that. If you're talking to the sort of prototypical 70-year-old patriarch, and you say, write a letter about how much you love your daughter, that's probably out of their comfort zone. But if you say, write 2 paragraphs to your great grandkids about what you know about hard work, what you know about being a good friend, what you know about responsibility, you can access people through different prompts and questions. And we're doing a lot of like really creative things to try to find the prompts that connect with people. But I could see some advisors putting a line in the sand, but I think it's also important to understand that everyone's gonna come to this work in their own way with their own questions that they're more comfortable answering. And that letter to your kid might be really, really natural for someone, and they know it, and it just comes out and it's perfect. But for other people, it might be like the scariest thing anyone's ever asked them to do. So if we can find something that is more accessible, tell me why the Yankees are so important to you, whatever. Like these are real things, like if you love the Yankees, it probably is kind of part of your legacy in a weird way. If you watch all of their games and you love baseball and all that kind of stuff, there's I don't think we have to like diminish some of those questions and say that they're not part of the bigger picture, because they are.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, there is like an emotional intelligence here to some degree. I'm trying to think back when I was 24, 25. I was very tactical advisors, kind of doing what I was told to do, saying what I was told to say. So if you're listening, you're like, Alex, Sten, I just don't know if I'm good at that yet. I think that's just some separate work. The good news is that doesn't require you to take more tests. Like that's just a communication, confidence, emotional intelligence track, I think.
Yeah, I would also say that the vast majority of advisors don't feel like they're good at this. And that makes it an opportunity,
Yeah.
right? We're in the first inning of this. I don't think this is a trend that is going to, I don't think this is like a fad. It feels more of a trend. I don't really see, no matter what happens with AI and technology, people sort of waking up in 15 years being like, I actually don't know if I care about my family and children that much. Right. So to me, it's, if you're an advisor, it's like, read some of these books or listen to them, however you read. Entrusted, Wealth 3.0 by Jim Grubman, Complete Family Wealth by Jay Hughes. You know, just do something that's realistic for you. Like read one book a year about legacy. It's not going anywhere. And it's different than something like tariffs, right? I don't know if like being a tariff expert is going to matter in 3 years or not, but it feels like legacy will. So
Sure.
I would, if I was an advisor, I would just say like, try to be more comfortable talking about legacy at the end of this year than you were at the start, and just slowly move in that direction. And before you know it, you'll be like facilitating a multi-generational family meeting. You'll be like, man, never thought I'd be able to do this, but you can.
That's a good point. Yeah, my mind goes to like how do you weave it into your process so you don't forget it or skip it or revert back to what you were doing before. So I think changing my fact finder comes to mind. I love the idea of like, hey, I'm just going to improve my comfort in this topic, whether that's slowly, like, hey, one book a year, or it's like, no, aggressively, I'm going to go to a conference, read 3 books in the next 6 months, like however you want to approach it. The tool was helpful for me to get in. It prompted, and I went through it personally. And I think that was helpful to be like, oh, I'm in this business and I'm not thinking about this. I write letters to my kids. I do some stuff that I would say maybe not everybody does.
Yeah.
But I couldn't have told you what my 5 words were before. And you had these, like, I don't know if that was AI generated options for me to choose of like which statements are most true of you. And it kind of helped me narrow
your
that
purpose
down.
statement.
Purpose statement.
Yeah.
So for the advisors listening, I think you need to go through it first. What's the best way for them to kind of experience some of that process and get inside the tool?
We have a free trial for advisors, so they can go to our website. I'm sure we'll put it in the show notes, totalfamily.io, and sign up as a partner. You can do the advisor free trial, and that will give them full access to the tool. They can invite themselves, they can invite friends, clients, etc. But what you're talking about, Sten, is leading by example. That is so powerful because if you don't take 12 minutes to define your values and purpose, and then you go start talking to your clients about it, they're going to see right through it. They're not expecting you to be an expert on it, but if it's important, then you're going to show that in your behavior. And I think like advisors that are just willing to then, because now you have a different lens, you're going to be like, oh, well, I really struggled between these 2 words because of this and this. So I see what you're saying, versus if you've never like done any of the self-reflection yourself, I think it's hard. But yeah, we have a 90-day free trial for advisors, and they can go in there and explore it. And we, our tool is the purpose of our company is doing legacy better. We are never going to be done pursuing that purpose. And some of the best ideas we've gotten are from advisors. So if you see something in the tool or whatever, you're like, oh, what about this? Why can't I do this? But just tell us. We want these ideas. We care deeply about this advisor community and making sure that the tool is built to support the life that they're living. Not a conceptual, like academic version of being a wealth advisor, like the actual day in grind in the trenches wealth advising.
Yeah, that's a good word. All right, brother. Appreciate you being here, man. Everybody, go check the tool out, get into it. And then I would challenge you as a business owner and advisor, like, how do you best improve your conversation around legacy, which obviously is estate planning practically, but I appreciate we differentiated that. Like, there's a deep conversation to be had here, and then there's the advisor hat on, check some boxes approach. And I think, and I would agree with you, most advisors are skimming over this topic, whether they don't feel equipped or they just don't realize the depth that exists there. I think a huge opportunity for new business, but also how do you level up if I'm getting in a rut meeting with my clients and they're expecting the same thing, how do you surprise them that when they show up to your office, you say, hey, we're going to do something different today? And you have something like this. I think that is only a positive.
I love it. Thanks for having me, Sten.
Thanks for being here, man. Talk to you soon.